Hello, gamers, and welcome to another exciting edition of Game Warp. I'm your host, Elwood,
I'm Kim.
and this is our featured game review for Tales from the Borderlands. Tales from the Borderlands is a Telltale Games release, originally released in November 2014, based on the popular series Borderlands. This saw Telltale Games once again reworking a popular series that have been already found success in the likes of The Walking Dead, and certainly prior to their release of the Batman Telltale series. Here they took on a game which somehow bizarrely lends itself well to the Telltale game format, as we follow two characters who are basically traveling through Pandora. This time, the story isn't focusing on any of the bolt hunters we've seen in the previous games. Instead, we follow Reese and Fiona. Reese is a Hyperon employee who is basically screwed over with his best friend Vaughn in a misguided attempt to get promoted to the high ranks of the company. And he's basically double-crossed by his boss and general rival Hugo Vasquez, voiced fantastically by Patrick Warburton. And through a series of events, he finds himself working with Fiona, who is basically a con artist working on Pandora, along with her sister Sasha. And through a series of events, these two find themselves on a quest to find unknown treasure and fame in this fabled vault that is somewhere on Pandora. It's a 5-episode series, and it's probably noteworthy in the fact that each of these episodes is actually a little bit longer than usual Telltale games, as they normally run between 2.5 hours per episode. So you get a lot more game than you would normally get with usual Telltale games. But at the same time, it retains many of the usual qualities we've come to expect from the franchise. Now, Kim, I know you're a fan of the Telltale games. I mean, you've obviously played the Batman games, you played the Wolf Amongst Us. How did it obviously play for you, obviously looking at their take of Borderlands?
Tales from the Borderlands is pretty cool. I mean, I think to start off is that I know nothing of the Borderlands world to start with, so I'm going in this completely fresh. I don't know like what world and what is to expect in most of it. But this worked really well for me. I like to look at Telltale games in a way where there's this starting phase where there's like The Wolf Among Us, which I played, which I really, really liked how they set up the action and how they set the story and, really mesh those QTEs well with keeping the action and keeping it very engaging. Whereas there's later games, like Batman, Guardians, that really I feel are a little bit more lacking, and quite ironically because there are action-based games, like they're action-packed. They're supposed to be action-packed stories, and yet they don't seem to execute the action as well. Whereas if you look back at Tales from the Borderlands, it comes in a time where it was like the Wolf Among Us phase, and they really captured that action and QTE thing really well. I think even better than the Wolf Among Us. Mostly because they really keep it fresh, and they keep not only the action, but they also give, like, Reese and Fiona each have their own other aspects. Like, Reese has his cybernetic eye, which he can look to scan technology and scan people around him and get the info. And while on the other hand, Fiona has money that she can keep picking up from, like, loot boxes and stuff, and you can buy stuff from random places if you happen to land on them. Obviously, there's not a whole lot of it. I think there could have been more, but the experience itself is really fun. Like, every episode kind of leads up. You kind of get a villain, you kind of get some other characters. They might be short-lived, or they might last further, but it's still really like colorful characters. And, you brought up a really good point about Patrick Warburton being Vasquez, which he has such a unique voice. The moment you hear his voice, you know right away. And to be fair, like this Tales of the Borderlands is like a reunion tour of Uncharted. There's Troy Baker, Nolan North, Laura Bailey, um, and I think there was someone else I can't remember right now. But it's like it's a lot of people from Uncharted that did Uncharted voices that are in this, and it's just it really shows how talented they are and how they make these characters really engaging to watch.
Oh, definitely. And I mean, you were saying earlier with Fiona. Obviously, Fiona's the con artist, so a lot of her abilities rely on her being able to sass her way out of abilities, as well as amass a nice collection of hats, which seems to be this running thing for her throughout the game. Is the fact that she constantly seems to have this ability to amass hats and lose hats at the same time. Um, and there's some really great back and forth dialogue between the characters of Reese and Fiona. And what this game did especially well is the fact that here we have more of a group element than we've seen perhaps in the other Telltale games. And as you go through the course of the game, you pick up different group members who sort of pad it out. So by the time you get into later chapters, you've got quite a really nice group that have gelled together over the course of this game. And each of the characters bring different elements to the story. And
Mm-hmm.
it was just always it's just so much fun, even when it's just Reese and Fiona. These characters are just so much fun to be around and to interact with. That it really kept you engrossed in the story in a way that perhaps the other Telltale games haven't, where they've often been bogged down in puzzle elements or very bland sort of dialogue. Here, it seems the game is constantly moving at a quick pace, and is constantly proving surprising in what they're doing with the source material. As being a Telltale game, you wouldn't think that it's going to be heavy on action, yet here we have a number of fantastic action sequences throughout. We get chase sequences, we get gun shootouts, we get to finger guns battle, which is probably one of the highlights of the game. Which, if you're a fan of Spaced, you would know exactly what we're talking about when we talk about finger guns. And it's this weird element that somehow works, but they subtly hinted at it going into the sequence. So that when you finally get into this big finger gun battle, and it becomes this overblown quick time sequence. It's just so comedically funny to play through, and you kind of wish that you could rewind and play it again because it's just so much fun to do. At the same time, I mean, obviously, when we talk about these quick time events, they are very forgiving. It's not like some games where it's quick time games where you've got to have like that cat-like reflexes. Here, you do they are quite forgiving, or so that you can have some late timing and still not interrupt the flow of the story. Certainly for myself, I mean, I'm a fan of the Borderlands game, so there's a lot of good nods to the source material. There's characters that will come back that we've obviously seen. I mean, obviously, Handsome Jack plays a very key part in this game. In many ways, he forms like this alternate personality for Reese, because Reese somehow has Handsome Jack in his head, but no one else can see him. We also get to see people like Mad Moxie. We get to see Scooter, who probably gets one of the most significant character arcs of the entire game. And it was so surprising when he was introduced. You think, oh, it's just enough of those nods to the original game. I mean, he's not going to play too much of a role within this game, but he becomes such a key part and not going to be one of the most emotional elements of the entire game. And it's fun just being a fan of the series to see characters pop up, but at the same time, they're not appearing to the point where they're taking over the story. They're just there, sort of adding to this world and making it a completely more immersive experience than just being, oh, it's this game. This game actually ties in with your other games you played already, and with it essentially on the timeline taking place after the events of Borderlands 2. So it's nice the fact that they've not gone and said, oh, this is a completely different timeline. They've actually managed to find a way to work into the existing timeline, yet at the same time create a game that is still accessible for people like yourself, Kim, who've never played Borderlands before.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it was certainly an enjoyable experience for myself.
Yeah, I mean, I actually even felt like one thing that I haven't felt a lot, and we talk a lot about whenever we talk about Telltale games, is the cause and effect and how we really feel whether it it really like, when you make a choice, whether it really affects your ending or it affects the choices you have in the future. And I feel like this one might actually have had a difference, mostly because it reflects on, say, like at the final chapter more than anything, obviously. Like not anything in the beginning, I think, but more the final chapter, you end into the sequence where you have to do a big fight and you have a team building. So you get to choose who is on your team, and you get to choose, like, and your choices of people are based a little bit on the choices you've made, on like how you've ended those relationships throughout, like how you built those relationships throughout the game. And while I haven't gone back to play it a second time, and I wonder if the choices were different, if say like I burned a bridge somewhere, I just wonder if the choices would have changed, whether that would like based on that, say like one of the characters, if I had like chosen to let him blow up or something, would he have come back to be able to do this, right? Or things like that. And I think that that's really nice because you really get to see, like, as you're looking through the description of these people that you get to choose, you really see they're like, oh, you did this for this person. So now they feel like they will be willing to join your team, or this, and then that's the reason of why they're doing. And it's so detailed and done so well that it kind of feels like, maybe even if it's not a big thing, it feels like your choices do matter. And that's really important in a Telltale game, because it is, the first thing you read in this thing when a game starts is that your choices will affect the outcome of the game. And I feel that recent Telltale games really lack that aspect, whereas Tales and even Wolf Among Us does that aspect really well. I guess talking about, I really like, I feel like I'm jumping ahead, but like talking about like the final episode, I think that that was really like a highlight of the show, because it was like a big fight scene that had a lot of, it felt like there was a lot of homage to what was going on. There was like a Street Fighter fighting kind of sequence that was really interesting, just for starters. And you had like a little bit, like, because we have these like little robot guys, like Gordy's is super cute, and he's one of these little robots that is the center of the story, of that you need to find his parts, and that's why you're going on this hunt for, he's like a key to he's like the key to the vault key that you need to find. And he's just super fun to watch along when he's with like Loaderbot, which is kind of like your Reese's helpful defender, mechanical defender.
Yeah, I mean, certainly when we look at the robots, somehow this game manages to make you care about the robots. I mean, Loaderbot, and especially, there were so many emotional moments I felt with Loaderbot, and the fact that he somehow manages to constantly keep evolving, and even though parts keep falling off him as you go through the course of the game, he still somehow manages to keep going. I mean, I've just to obviously go back to what you were saying, I think certainly the choices in this game seem more impactful than we have seen in other Telltale games. And some of the choices, it perhaps makes it seem that they're going to be more important, and the game does actually kind of work around it so that it keeps it pretty much on the same path, and perhaps just changes the interaction. I mean, we obviously you talked about the if you choose to blow up Loaderbot in the first chapter or not. While it obviously thinks, oh, you would think, oh, that's him, you're not going to see him again in this game. He does actually come back, but he gets in a mood with you as a result of you blowing him up. So he turns out it's like rejection mode activated, and and one of the aspects of the later episodes, if you go down that path, is the fact that you have to make up with Loaderbot to get him back on side with you. So while it does obviously present seemingly more different sort of paths that you can take, it does affect him more in a dialogue sense than, for the most part, than anything in regards to the story. Um, Certainly, I think the main sort of deciding factor here is really in the relationship between this three-way relationship we have between Reese, Fiona, and Handsome Jack, as they both, Fiona and Handsome Jack, are trying to fight for the soul essentially of Reese, and you have to sort of decide who he's going to trust. I mean, do you trust the Con Queen, turn Bolt Hunter, or do you trust this like most untrustworthy psychotic Handsome Jack, who's obviously proven, if you're a fan of the series, you know about how well you can sort of trust his character. Um, and there's, I mean, just the way the situations you're thrown into, you never really sure what way you're going to go. I mean, one minute you're just sort of exploring vaults, next thing you know, you're in a Mad Max style death race. And you mentioned already about spending credits and the fact that you're finding loot and you can pickpocket certain characters. Um, it's a really interesting element when we get into like the costume changes. And I don't know about yourself, but I found myself constantly when it gave me an option to costume change, I was trying to match with the future selves because this is essentially a game told from as in flashback form. So I found myself whenever presented with the costume they're going to end up in, it's like, oh, I must change it to that costume because that's the one that they have. And perhaps if I'd played it differently, I would have gone, oh no, maybe I'll try something different and see if they end up in the same costume at the end. But yeah, seeing having the option to turn Fiona into a steampunk princess is kind of cool. Um, I thought that was a nice touch to touch the game, and certainly one of the aspects I didn't understand is why the game seems to be setting it up so that Reese and Fiona are going to get together, but it hits that middle point, and then it suddenly becomes like, oh, we're going to try and set up Reese and Fiona, has
Princess Sasha.
Reese and Sasha, which seemingly came out of nowhere. But I don't know, for some reason, I feel compelled to have computer game characters get together. So I felt myself compelled to push these characters together during the mission that those two spend together. So, I mean, with the relationship elements, I mean, how did you push it? I mean, did you try and force characters together, or did you just like go the more logical route?
Well, I honestly felt that I didn't really feel that Fiona and Reese was being pushed together. I really just thought that they were really just on the path of trusting each other, and that was like how they were going to trust each other in this mission was where they would find the resolve in the story, because obviously, like you said, this is a flashback stage. Whereas I kind of did see as they started pairing up a lot of like the missions for Sasha and Reese that it felt like they were really going, they were really trying to pair these two together. But then at the same time, it also depends on how much you've bonded with August, which is another character who starts off with Sasha, and how much you want them to be together. I think that that's a big factor. I actually grew. I felt like this relationship didn't hit me so much, whereas I actually like the character of August really much. And I think that I don't know if it has to do with the fact that like Nolan North is such a great voice actor that I really bought into his character, or just the arcs that I gave him. But I mean, like in terms of relationship, it was okay. I mean, I didn't really feel like I was pushing anyone towards anything. I was definitely trying to get on the good side of Sasha because, she's kind of like my partner in crime. And when things go south, I really do want her on my side so that she's not like stabbing me in the back.
Yeah, I mean, hey, I went a completely different way with the character of August. I mean, I didn't particularly like him from the start, so any opportunity to try and get him killed off, like when we have the gang boss, Valerie, turn up, and you have the option of who to put the blame on. It was like I went and blamed August for it.
Oh, really?
I was like, because he was it was just this too good an opportunity to try and get rid of him, and obviously it goes its own way. But I mean, just the characters that we get in this game, they're so interesting for the most part. I mean, there's only a couple of characters that didn't perhaps make any sense, such as like the hooligans that were forced to sort of pair with Fincher and Kruger. I didn't particularly vibe with them. And we obviously get Athena, who is another Vault Hunter, who's introduced to. I thought had a really interesting element to the game, even though she was essentially just a female Captain America. And the
Okay.
fact that she just throw a shield is her weapon of choice. Um, but I think it's a real credit to the writing, the fact that she's introduced in one character, and by the end of like chapter 3, where we see her being carted off by two rival Vault Hunters, that I really felt this emotional connection to it. And it was like, no, you can't kill this character off. I really like this character.
Yeah.
Um, and to the point where, I mean, these are characters that we follow in the main game, Brick and Mordecai. Yeah, I really disliked him in this game because of the side I am on the story. They're interfering with my quest. So It was funny. I saw characters I originally saw as heroes in the original games now seen as a villain in a slant because they're interfering with my quest. So it was really interesting just in how it was written like that. So
So, like, I can't say anything because I have no relation to the original game, so I don't know the characters. But, like, for you, did you think that this arc of, like, telling a story that, like, obviously overlapping characters and doing that, that's really neat. But do you think that this gives you, like, a different idea on, like, do you like the course of how the story took?
I really liked how the course that the story took. I also love the fact that because it's being told in flashback, that you occasionally have Reese or Fiona call the other one out if you try to do too outlandish an action, such as like, oh yeah, I kicked Valerie's head off, or I killed the whole army, or something like that. The game actually pauses and like, go, no, 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 wait a minute.
Yeah, that was really good. It was like one of those things where you really want to see, you want to try and pick that outlandish one because that would be the one which turns into this like cheese fest kind of thing where it's just super blown up and you just have like I think the first thing was Reese when he has his encounter with like August and he's trying to, like do this thing and he's just like he just blows his mind. That's what you call it. And he's just in this like his own little world, and it phases into outer space, and and then there's like, wait a minute, that's not how it went. Is that how you want this to go?
Yes.
I don't know, but that really is a testament on just how great our main characters are and how really I felt like it was really good how they phased between like the Reese scene and the Fiona scene, really like being able to get behind the both sides of the story to really get a full picture of how things went down.
Yeah, it's definitely been an interesting ride, and it's one that I already want to like go back and play again, which is not something I normally say for the Telltale games. Normally, by the time we get to the end of them, it's all like, oh, I'm done now, ready to go off and do something else. So it's kind of nice to
Yeah.
actually want to go back and look at it already. I, d- I think this is probably my favorite Telltale game to date now, and it's not even just due to connection to the actual Borderlands series. It's just because it was such a fun experience all the way through. It just really, I think it really outshone the expectations I had going into it, and I think it had a lot again to do with the fact that when you play, when you're familiar with the Telltale games, you have the sort of expectation going in, and the fact that this was felt so different than everything we've seen before, and the fact that it had so many twists, it felt like a proper story rather than just sort of going through the motions
Hmm.
of getting from point A to point B. It actually felt like you were having impact on the story. You were crafting this tale that was being told, and just combine that with like the amount of really great twists and pop culture references. I mean, we get a Doctor
Yeah.
Strangelove reference, we get Cowboy
Yeah.
Bebop references. Um, it just sort of only pays into my geek fan house even more, really. So
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, it's like what I said, there was Street Fighter fighting type of combos, and then at the end, you have like Loaderbot and Gortys, and they end the game, and they kind of remind you of Star Wars, C-3PO and R2-D2, and it was like a geek fest. It was like people who made this game really, like the Telltale team that made this game, really had fun with it, and they were really passionate about it. And that makes me think that I still wonder why they haven't done a season two. Obviously, The Wolf Among Us just got season two, so maybe this one, is right, maybe is going to be the next one that might get a follow up, hopefully. Because I would really like them to jump back into this world and, be able to do something that seems like they really had a great time putting it together. I don't know. Would you want a season two?
oh, definitely, I would like to see season two. Certainly of the Telltale properties, I would see it's kind of the one I'm most excited to see. I mean, certainly at the moment they have been rumored as being developing the James Bond property, but I mean, the world of Pandora is just so vast and interesting. Um, that it just makes me want to see more fairy tales from the Borderlands, especially if it's more of a recent Fiona, just such great characters to follow. Um, I think it'd be really interesting to see, or just just have them meet more interesting, weird characters. And I think the fact that the game is still keeping those same title cards that we have for the original game, such as where flash up in it, say like Valerie, she's the queen pin and gives you these little snippets. It's nice to see it keeping so much in tone of the game, and maybe they can bring back some more of the characters from like the other games, like Tiny Tina. I would love to see Tiny Tina return and go on a dungeon siege style venture from her. Not only because it would mean obviously getting to get some more voice acting from Ashley Birch, which again is never a bad thing. So
Yeah. All right. So, what would you rate this game?
I think I'm going to go 5. I'm going to give this a solid 5 out of 5. It's a game I enjoyed immensely throughout. It's never seemed to outstay its welcome, and it constantly surprised me throughout. Yes, some of the chapters perhaps are not as strong as others, but if we're viewing this as a complete package, then it more than outweighs for the faults that it does have. So certainly for myself, it's a solid 5.
I'm actually I would probably give it a little lower. I'm around like a 4 maybe. Just because I really thought the some of the episodes, while I do appreciate the extra content, don't get me wrong, I thought that it was very like some of the parts really dragged, and it was kind of lengthy for me. Like I just didn't really, maybe it's because I don't have that connection to the Borderlands, so I didn't get engaged into the characters or just like seeing them come back as much. But I mean, they did do a lot of really nifty things. So for like Telltale Games, for us, a 4.5 is great. It's a great score from us, I think. I would definitely want to see a sequel, and hopefully that's something that's in the works. Yeah, so this wraps up this episode. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, share, and subscribe. Head over to our home base, thatmomentin.com, to read gaming reviews. To get gaming news every single day, follow us on Twitter and like us on Facebook at GameWarp Podcast. You can hang out with us on our Twitch channel where we stream at GameWarp Podcast, and see our gaming obsessions over on Instagram, instagram.com/GameWarp Podcast. Till next time, bye!